we're now going live. There's going to be people joining us, obviously, on the road, but there's one or two here already. So welcome. Thank you, those that are joining. I'm with Dave. Just to clear things up, I'm sitting in my home in the UK, and Dave's in Brisbane, in Albion in Brisbane. So hence the timing of this particular call. Dave, before we get talking about how you can actually cope during these strange and troubling times, what was your own experience? Because I believe you were actually in New Zealand when everything really started to kick off in terms of lockdown.
Yeah, I did. I did 2 weeks here, which was really good, and I kind of had a feeling that Dubai, as I came through Dubai, was just a little bit edgy. People were wearing masks and so on, and it was a bit, okay, but people are maybe being oversensitive. Then I did 2 weeks here, and then I went across to see Beauden Barrett, and originally it was going to be for 4 days. So I arrived on the Sunday, very relaxed, lovely sunny day, which is deceptive, really. Did a great session at the training ground for the Blues, and I went back to the hotel, and suddenly I get a text and actually say the Australian borders are shut midnight tonight. So there was a massive panic, and hats off to Kate for getting hold of me quickly, and then Beauden Barrett's missus, who booked the tickets. And meanwhile, in my kit, I hadn't even had time to trash the hotel room. So I piled my stuff on, and I was still in my training gear, running for the taxi, got to the airport, and the irony was the ticket was on China Airways, which was an irony. Anyway, I got back to Brisbane, hour and a half to go before the lockdown. And even the machine where you put your passport in actually says, you realize now you're 14 days in quarantine. But actually, I was there at 9:30 and this kicks in at midnight. So it was a pretty close call.
Wow. It reminds me of that scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark with Indiana Jones just going under.
Yeah, it's a little bit
crashing down. Gosh. Right, okay. People are jumping on board. Again, welcome. If you didn't hear me say hi earlier. Dave, what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you a few questions. We've got loads of people piled in actually in advance of this call. So anybody watching, you will get a chance to ask your questions either through the webinar, if you're on the webinar. We've got a couple of guys in their own homes who are picking up on questions from YouTube and from Facebook Live. But to kick things off, you come in, like you say, 90 minutes through the deadline or whatever it is. That's the exciting, personal, scary bit. But then we're faced with this weird reality that effectively the world's been turned upside down. Everything's lost. Facilities have been lost. The ability to meet up and coach people's been lost. All the stuff that you've basically run a lifetime of coaching on is more or less chucked out the window. So what was the first thing you did? Because I know you talk about reset, but that has to be like the ultimate reset.
Yeah, it was. It is. I'm not even sure I've come to terms with it, to be really honest. I mean, at the moment with the Reds, I'm seeing all the principal kickers. Originally, when I started seeing them 2-3 weeks ago, they had come in groups of 2. And of course, I was able to travel to the ground because I can't work at home. So you become an essential worker if you can't work at home. So clearly I can't have guys kicking rugby balls in the front room. So you have to go to the ground. So originally it was groups of 2, okay? And we had a bucket of water and Ajax, and we had to clean the balls after every 2 players. Then another 2 would come and so on. And then they changed it to you can only have groups of 2. So it now meant 1 player at a time. So now they come in for 1 hour, okay? Then they kick, then we clean the balls, spray the Ajax on, the next guy comes in and so on. And there is a silver lining to this because the players have benefited dramatically, and there would have never been a time like this in either the pre-season or any other time to actually have big chunks of time. And probably the last time that I experienced this amount of freedom to be able to work with an individual was probably with Johnny Wilkinson way back in Newcastle, because the director of rugby was also an international goal kicker, and he really understood the demands and what it takes to be, you know, as good as you can be. So that was really helpful. And then luckily, I was lucky with Clive Woodward, because he also gave me the space, because he realized how important it is. So here, it's not, the people are just not quite aware what it takes to be that good. But the players are very, very keen. They're beginning to understand. They're beginning to kind of get educated. Gosh, I didn't realize I could do this. And I keep going back to them and said, right, okay, 3 months ago, where were you compared with now? And they're just going, wow. And they've had time to do it and time to digest it. And, you know, these guys want to be principal kickers in rugby. So they're, you know, restarts, kick for goal, obviously, kick for position and so on. And I'm doing the same with Beauden Barrett, albeit almost like I'm doing with you now, but I send him stuff. Ironically, I felt it was exactly the same as me sending sessions to Molinari.
I was just going to ask you about that. So, I mean, there's one thing, as you say, making your adaptations with change with guys that you're actually with, even if you're having to scribble the ball down every time you pass it to them. Yeah. But you're also working with people, not only remotely generally, but also who've also had, I mean, look at Molinari in Italy, which tragically has had huge impact, the virus, not, I mean, you know, obviously with regards to all the illness and deaths, but also just the way of life for everyone, whether you're an elite sports person or you know, a regular individual, is just, you know, it's beyond recognition. How do you support people like that from a coaching perspective?
Well, I think the thing with Fran, there was a bit of a silver lining to this, in that he had a back problem. So the fact that he hasn't been able to play, and nobody else will be able to play either, is actually been quite useful. It's been massively disappointing, don't get me wrong, but it's actually been useful. And probably in another 2 weeks, he's hoping that the Wisley will be open to at least hit balls on the range, whether it's open. I mean, interestingly, a lot of the golf clubs in Queensland are open, but you can only play in pairs and you're not allowed a buggy. So, you know, and there's no bar. You literally go to the pro shop, get your stuff and go. Because exercise, they do look on that as really important. And you see quite a few people running around here in Albion, you know, and it doesn't seem to be a problem. With Fran, I mean, ironically, I was talking to him last night, and we're looking at actually starting to get the numbers of shots together. And, you know, I've got records of what we were doing last year and so on. And we slowly build on that. There are some changes we are making. And I think it's a question of, you can get very depressed if you keep looking backwards and, oh, we can't do this and we can't do that. And you know, you've got to be going, okay, so what can we do? And is it something that we can gain on it? And I think that certainly with the rugby players, this is a pause in the season. They should be in the middle of the Super 14. Okay, now with golf, with Fran, it's been an injury. And interestingly, it reminds me of the time when Johnny Wilkinson had a knee reconstruction. I remember the first time I met him at Bath University, and we were looking at, okay, well, let's plan out what we're trying to do. And we had to change technically how he kicked. But our mantra was better than before. We have no interest in getting back. We have an interest in getting better than we were before. So the fact that he wasn't playing and doing a lot of practicing, there were things we had time to do that we otherwise wouldn't have done had we been playing.
How do you pursue that? Sorry to interrupt. How do you pursue that dialogue with the guys you're working with now, be it Fran, be it Beauden Barrett, the Reds? Because a risk of sort of, pushing it too hard. But yes, they're stopping playing, and of course that has a huge impact. But they've got families as well. They've got friends. They've got their own worries. Have you had to affect the way that you're actually supporting and coaching people outside of the means of improving their technical game or whatever?
I thought I kind of might have had, but actually I think what I've become is actually a bit of normality towards them. And,
That's
and I, and I kind of am nervous about getting into that area, but I like to be, they're expecting me to get them better and to find a way. All right. And that's what I'm going to do. Now, the conditions change. It's a little bit awkward. We can't do what we need to do. We get, and all the rest of it, but we're still going to find a way. And I think as long as I keep that sort of rock for them, there is something in their life that they can kind of rely on. And it's probably, I hope it's my attitude towards them. Now, it's interesting that these are full-time professional sports people. And yes, they have families and well, some of them do, but they would be expected to be training in the gym. Well, of course they can't because the gyms are all shut. So they've got weights and bits and pieces at home. They would be expecting to be doing team training and stuff. Well, we can't because we can only have a group of 2, and so it goes on. So within that, we said, well, how can we get it? And one of the things that I've done, which has helped particularly with the kickers, is I've tried to create a model. You see, what used to happen was that kickers would kick, and when they get tired, they don't kick because they get injured, and rightly so. But when they kicked, they were kicking 75%, 80% effort. And actually, funnily enough, it's easier to kick hard than it is to kick soft. So I created this reverse repair. And basically, they're accountable for the flight and the line, but they can only put 40% effort in. And it is the most frustrating but demanding piece of skill acquisition. But the reason I'm doing it, A, I've got the opportunity because I've got the time, but B, when they're tired and they've had a heavy leg session or a massive contact session, they can still do reverse repair. So I'm kind of booking a ticket that they otherwise wouldn't have had. So if you like, there is something, there is a gain out of this. And when you have, individual for an hour and another individual for another hour and so on, and this goes on for, as it is now, certainly 4 weeks, going into its 4th week, you get to know them very well. And then you can start to individualize the sessions. There are bits that they're competing with each other, but they're all determined to get better than their previous self, and now they can tangibly see it, and that's rewarding, despite the environment that we're in.
I'm going to come on to people's questions in a minute because we've got loads coming through, but I was just interested in asking you, actually, Dave. I know it's something you adhere to, the whole better than previous self. Everything's changed in a coach. Now, fair enough, you are getting together with the Reds, but there's people you're going to have to speak with remotely, perhaps for a protracted period of time. So how have you been able to approach that? Because there's quite a lot of the people we've got listening in and watching. I know there's quite a few coaches amongst them. So what are your words to yourself and them as coaches, and how you need to adapt to be able to not just go with it and change with the times, but they actually improve?
Well, I think the most important thing is to have a kind of a baseline, to have an agreement with the coach or the athlete that what are you doing, and if that standard is confirmed by a number, like if he was a golfer, what percentage are you from 10-foot putts, or you give them a practice and they come back with a score, then you're starting to deal with something that's tangible. And I'm a great believer in that. It's good to say that people have improved, and you being the coach, but it's more important that the player or the athlete says, I definitely know I've got better, because last week I was doing X number, this week I'm doing X plus 2, and I'm actually finding it easier. And I think that once you get on that, and it also depends on the sport, there are so many components you can do. So for example, if you had a rugby player and you're working, particularly a youngster, and you say, okay, so what are you doing? Are you kicking with your weaker leg? So you might be right-footed. Are you actually working with your left foot? And 90% of kids will say, no, I haven't. I said, well, I'd like you to try that. And one of the things I'd like you to do is to look in the mirror when you get home, look at your right foot posture. Now turn it round and look at your left foot posture. Have a good look at that and see where your shoulders are. Now, when you go out and try and kick, I want you to keep your opposite shoulder forward, or whatever it is. And then if you can video it, brilliant. And video, even just holding the phone, okay, and getting the guy to hit balls from the front or the side or whatever, is priceless. And I get a lot of people sending me videos. Beauden sends me videos, and the way that I've worked with him is he has the video he sent to me of him. I play it, he plays it at the same time, and we're on Zoom, and I'm going through the kick with him. Then he makes notes about what he needs to do slightly differently, then goes out and does it again. So it can be done. And I think the advantage is you don't take anything for granted. And if you have to record it and you have numbers and you write down the sessions, I know this is not quite what you, I know it won't mean much, but that's Beauden's session for tomorrow. And
it's
all
the people taking frantic screenshots now.
Yeah, I know. But he will know exactly what it is. I've already had the reply from, yep, got it, understood it, all right? And then the numbers he'll score on, how many times to get it. And this session is actually a 40% kicking day because he's going to do a heavy leg session before. So it's in a funny sort of way, it can make you a better coach. I know that sounds horrible.
I understand that. I mean, we've had conversations.
Anything for granted. And in the same way, if I go back to my sort of, so the sessions that I do with the guys, you see, so that was Bryce Haggerty. Those are all his scores. And I literally take a snapshot of that, send him that. So he's not keeping the scores, I'm keeping the scores, and I'm videoing, and then I send the lot to him. They do a couple of sessions on their own, and then they come back to it again. So simply for the Reds players and for Beauden, it's been a golden opportunity, and it's made me kind of reassess how I would actually coach. I mean, I would definitely now, whenever that is, when I see Sexton and Ford, I would have a slightly different approach.
All right, that's. I'd like to ask you more on that, but we'll say these questions are coming in, and we did promise people. So the people at the No Limits members, those that you guys that are actually on the webinar, you're getting priority. So I've got a few coming in here. This seems like the perfect link from what you were just saying about working with the Reds and Beauden Barrett. I don't have a name, but somebody's asking, what kicking exercises do you recommend during lockdown? So one for the kickers. I'm guessing I'll ask the same question for golfers as well, because I'm sure they're interested.
I think, well, I mean, kicking is quite an interesting one, actually, but just obviously hip flexion, any hamstring stretch, because you're quite and core stability work. All of those things don't really seem naturally kicking still, but it is really important. It's essentially, as with golf, when you kick with your body. The body is the stable, and then the legs work off it. A lot of people think you need strong legs. That isn't the case. I often see youngsters, particularly pre-puberty youngsters, trying to smash the ball as hard as they can. And I cringe because they're booking a groin problem down the track because they're not strong enough to be technically sound because they're trying to hit the ball too hard. And it's much, much better to get lighter balls, shorter distance, and get technically correct. And when you're technically correct, then you can start increasing the power. And I think it needs to be controlled. And I do understand it. It's a bit like amateurs at a driving range. You know, if you want to play golf, it's who hits the ball the furthest, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The difference with the golf is that with the golf, you're swinging a club. With kicking, you're swinging your leg. And if you haven't quite got control of your leg, then you could end up with all sorts of sort of soft tissue issues, particularly around the groin area, that can come back and make life difficult for you later on.
So what, just to sum that one up then, so obviously if you've got the opportunity to actually practice with be it kicking or with your swing, great, but there's plenty of opportunities to work on your core strength and stability, which will benefit your kicking game in time.
Absolutely. And there's loads and loads of stuff on the internet now about hip mobility, and so general stretching, mobility, but the key thing is stability. You want to be stable. Ironically, the kind of the way to think about it is that with a golfer, you see a lot of golfers saying it's really important to have strong legs and stable, because if you like, your body is on top of your legs, and your body turns and your legs are stable, right? They're not quite there. Now with kicking, I know it sounds ridiculous, it's actually an upside down golf swing, because your body's stable and your legs move. And if your legs move and your body moves, that's when you're in trouble. So that stability and that connection is the same, albeit the other way around.
Brilliant. Right, we've got a question from our mutual friend James here, who we've worked with on and off over the years. Do you think this pause will be looked on as a defining moment in many athletes' career in the years to come, and where some kick-ons and use the time to develop new skills which they maybe wouldn't have been able to do in a regular season?
Yeah, I do. And I think it'll come down primarily to the attitude of the individual, the environment that he finds himself in or herself in. Have they got encouragement? Are they self-motivated to ask questions of people and to find the best way for themselves? And I suppose there's an element of luck. I mean, I see people, just saying, well, okay, particularly some of the professional golfers, they're on social media and said, we're under lockdown and I'm playing in my 4 acres of green. Well, the average guy has not got 4 acres of green with bunkers and manicured gardens and so on and so forth. A lot of people have got a small garden and so you need to be hitting into a net and that type of thing. I know that in the School of Kicking, we've found a lot of people in small gardens have got kicking nets and they're using them for all sorts of things now. So, that's been really helpful, but it's kind of having an environment around them that encourages exploration and said, well, let's see what we can do, rather than we can't play, we can't train, the gym's shut, we can't go on the pitches, blah, blah, blah. It is easy, and I can understand it, to look at what you can't do. But if you could start with what you can do, you can find a way, and you can find a benchmark from which you can start to develop.
That ties in slightly, Dave, with a question Joshua is asking, because, as you say, there's a lot of things removed. You need to focus on what you can do. But I'm guessing factors that are always considered, but perhaps are coming more to the forefront now around lifestyle, sleep, stress, nutrition, etc. You know, they're a big, they're always a big deal, but now it's massive. How do you frame, Joshua was asking, how do you frame those specific lifestyle factors with your athletes, and how do you tie it back into performance?
It's a difficult one because, I'll admit I'm not sleeping particularly well. And I've got this sleep app, and I look at the percentages and I'm thinking, gosh, that wasn't very good. And I think that, you probably be not completely honest if you didn't say that this is upsetting. Our equilibrium is being shot at a little bit here, and things, we don't know what's going to happen. We hope we come through. We will come through. What we'll be like at the other end, nobody really knows. And particularly in sport, we're not sure what shape that'll be. I mean, the governments now are using this phrase, there'll be a new normal, so we're not even going to go back to our other normal, maybe. I don't know. So, but I look at it and I kind of go, right, okay, that was a good night's sleep. And I would try and encourage people to say, well, did you have a good day's nutrition? And most people know what to eat and what not to eat and not to avoid and so on. Did you, I've only got a flat. Okay, well, I've got one kettlebell and I can do some mobility exercises. But the thing is, do you write it down and celebrate? And with young kids, once you enthuse about the fact that they record it and they congratulate themselves, then that's fine. But adults, very quickly, we kind of go, well, that wasn't a bad session. It means it wasn't a disaster. And I'm actually saying, well, I don't want to hear that. I want to know what was good about it. So it may be, that you can do some flexibility work that you've never done before. Do you record the fact this is the first time you've done a flat hurdle stretch and actually got your knee flat on the ground? You've never done that before. Would you record that and go, wow, I have definitely improved? And we tend not to. And my biggest criticism of adults in an environment is that we tend to try and not make mistakes rather than try and achieve something. And we don't look to achieve if it's outside our normal reference. So if I was a prop forward, for example, okay, and clearly, I want something physically demanding, why would I spend time maybe just passing a ball, getting my wrist good so that I can do tip-ons, which I've never done before. And now I become a prop forward that's actually got really soft hands because I do 25 where I throw the rugby ball against the wall and I try and catch it and it comes off at all different levels. Or another one is, which I know is difficult, is literally just sort of in a squat position, just lob the ball up in the air and try and catch it on a half volley and then put it to the wall. I mean, it's the sort of the handling equivalent of, keepy uppies in soccer and so on. And I think that once you start doing that and exploring beyond the bounds of convention, then I think you can really go places and start feeling good about the fact that you can do it.
Well, some of the things you're saying there naturally makes me think about that. It sort of disappeared in my background. The No Limits journal. That was clever, wasn't it? Well, there we go.
Yes, it was. I don't know how you did that.
There's several questions have come in both in advance, and there's a few popping up on the screen in front of me now. People who've obviously signed up for the journal. If anybody watching on Facebook and YouTube isn't aware, for the period of this time, for the foreseeable future, we've made all the online content free. You just need to sign up for it. And also we've got a version of the journal for you that you can download as a PDF and print off at home as you're using it. So I think it may be useful, Dave, because I'm just looking at these questions here. If I pop up on screen the free version, you might just, if you'd be okay, we just whiz people through how they might be able to use it in their current situation. bearing in mind that everybody's obviously different, but then again, you've probably never spoken to such an audience got such similar challenges at the same time. So let me just bring this up and people can see what we've got for them. Here we go. So can you see that on your screen now, Dave?
Yeah, good.
So everybody will be able to see that. So
you
said about resets, you said about doing what you can do rather than what you can't do, all the factors. So those people that are downloading this, or those of you guys, thank you very much, actually have the journal and are using it. What advice would you say this could help people get through day by day?
Well, what I would do for this benchmark snapshot, and it seems a bit backwards, I would actually, I would just look at it and said, what do I want to achieve? I wouldn't worry about putting anything in there. Okay, and I would scroll that down. Okay.
Can I interrupt you? Sorry, Dave. Not like what do I know interviewing you, but I started a new journal when this lockdown happened 6 weeks ago, and I was like, what the hell do I put in there? And we've got a couple of questions that are similar. So what I did, which was completely non-sporting, I moved away from all my goals, and basically I spoke about achieving stuff on a day-by-day basis. So rather than having an ultimate goal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if that's any use to anybody, I just looked at my own perspective, self-care, looking out for others, and basically my goal was to. Interesting, talking about kicking and golf, was to keep grounded, because it's so easy to get swept away with it all. So I that was my thing: is what can I do to make sure each day is just rolls through and I manage myself more effectively. So that was my goal in that.
Right. Okay. So I mean, that's really good. What I didn't want to have is what a young kid said, what do I want to achieve? I want to play rugby for England.
Yeah.
that worries me. So often with youngsters, I say, look, don't worry particularly about that. Let's look at what we want to get better at. Okay. And then we start looking at the smaller steps, and then you go back and put that goal. Now, clearly, the goal that you've identified, Giles, is a really good holistic model there that actually keeps you grounded. Now you've got some things about, now how am I actually going to do it? Okay, so in the context of what do you want to achieve, where are you now?
So Kevin has written in a question. He's with his son, Jack.
Yes.
And Kevin's asked if you could just expand a little bit more on this idea of always starting from 10, please.
Yeah, sure, Kevin. The issue with 10 is, and this is why I chose it, is you got to start from somewhere. So, for example, I'm assuming Kevin's working with his son, Jack, or is helping his son, Jack. Okay, so Jack has doing a skill or doing something, it doesn't matter what it is. His starting point is 10. And the reason I've chosen this is, if I ask somebody and I said, well, okay, so rate yourself, let's say, for left-handed passing, just random, okay, left-handed passing. And what they give me tells me so much. So they might say, I'm pretty good. I'm about a 7 or 8 out of 10. Or they might say, perhaps a little more colorfully, I'm not very good at all. I'm a 2 or a 3 out of 10. Now, the adult way of responding to that is, oh, well, that's good, because if you're 3 out of 10, you've got a lot of room to improve. On the other side is, if you're 8 and 9 out of 10, well, that's pretty good. You don't need to do very much. Well, both of those are so wrong, it's frightening. But if you suddenly said to one lad, okay, so you're left-handed passing, and they go, yeah, but it's not very good. It doesn't matter. We're going to get better at it. It's 10. And he would look at that and he'd be going, wow, does that mean no? And this is the key. It's not out of anything. It's just 10. It means that's where you are, right here, right now. And the question we're going to ask in 4 weeks' time is, based on 10 4 weeks ago, where are you now? So isn't it much better for an individual in old money that was 3 out of 10 to be going 10, and I'm now 11, maybe even 11 and a half, because I did get a lot better and I caught more than I thought I would do, than 3 to 4, because 4 out of 10 is still pretty poor. That's old money. And it doesn't help. So I would rather start at 10 because it's the person right here, right now, hence the word snapshot. So 10, this is where we're starting from. And I do a snapshot for all the players that I work with.
Sorry to interrupt there. Josh was just asking, actually, how do you go about working with a player and taking them from development stage to operating at world class? Is this the technique you're talking about? Is this something you use with, a 10-year-old right the way through to a world class athlete?
I use the snapshot with Thomas, a little lad that I started with when he was 11, coming on 12. And the reason I did that, I wanted him to take charge of his own improvement. I did the same for Padre Harrington, who was 40 when I started with him, and everybody else. And what I do is I segment all the components. And then we're saying, okay, right, I have got better at this, because it is important, to reflect on what you're doing well before you go, that's okay. Now, what am I not very good at? And that's what I need to improve. I don't think that's a healthy way of looking at it. I think it's far better to say, we can improve on everything. And so, for example, I started with George when he was probably, I think he was 17. Probably George will have to correct me, 17 or 18 at Leicester. And he was at 10. And I think his last snapshot now, which I did last time I was in the UK, we started at 10. I think we're about 36 and 44, just going up incrementally. So even, wherever you are, it's, can I get better? Excellent. And then the great discussion is, well, how do I actually do it?
Brilliant. Thank you. Just dropping back into this idea for people, be they elite sports people, coaches, watching this or whatever you're doing. And obviously we wish you well wherever you are. So this is the standard page or a version thereof in the journal. So let's take this attempt at this every person scenario whereby, like you said, everybody's suffering some degree of anxiety. It's almost impossible to make clear long-term plans because nobody knows what's going to happen. And yet it's incumbent on you, for yourself and the ones you love and care for, to be the best you can be day in, day out. So how might you use the journal in this current situation?
I mean, if we look at day one there, we look at that and we look at, first of all, okay, how many hours sleep did I have last night? Okay, well, not 5, 6, no matter what it is, that's not enough. So we're going to try and get to 8 at some stage. Sleep quality. Now we put a little face there. You can have a smiley face there, felt really good, or you can put a number in. There's a lot of sleep apps, sometimes on the watch, sometimes on your phone, that give you a percentage. That's pretty good. Morning heart rate, if you're a bit of a fitness fanatic and you kind of like, well, okay, it's my morning heart rate. It's quite a good indication, actually, about your sort of health-ish, and then the weight. And then there may be other things that you want to monitor, and I've left that to you, okay? Now, we've got morning, afternoon, and evening. We've got intent and outcome. And all it is kind of just scribble down, okay, so what do I want to achieve in the morning? Okay, now it could be as bland as, right, I'm going to read to the kids because, and I'm going to read to them, and I'm also going to listen to them. And I'm going to give each one 40 minutes each, where I'm going to read for 20 minutes and they're going to read to me for 20 minutes. I put that down. Now, you could kind of go, well, I did it. Or you could kind of go, do you know what? That was really good today. So the outcome would be outstanding. Jennifer, for the first time, started doing sentences without pausing. Okay. Johnny found some difficult words, but he didn't get flustered because I was very calm. Right, so you can start building on that. And then the afternoon, you might say, right, I'm going to go for a run. and I'm going to do 20 minutes. And when I come back, because I actually want to play golf when all this is over, I'm going to do a little bit of core stability, and I'm going to do 4 exercises. So when you went out for the run, what was it like? What are the exercises? Okay, right. And then we go from there.
Okay, excellent.
Okay, and then the evening, again, it might be going to read to the kids at bedtime, or I'm going to do some exercise, or whatever it is. Okay, it's just basically having a plan, a daily plan that you can then say, well, I planned to do this, and I did this. Now, this is the important thing. When you reflect on the day, okay, it's really important, this, and I get this with all the athletes that I work with. The facts at the bottom, there are 3 facts there. I'd like you to get into the habit of writing down what was good about the day. Just what was good about the day. And it could be a really small thing. Now, I know, again, before this, we're in the virus scenario, but one of them, a little girl, Evelyn, one of the things she wrote down was, I held the door open for Mrs. Williams, a teacher. I held the door open for the teacher. Okay, now that may be so what, but for a 6-year-old, that was a big event, you know, and it's actually the person that you're working with. It's their map of reality. Now, I could, you know, very easily gone sort of, well, so what? That's not going to help you ice skate, but actually it helps you to start looking at what you can achieve. Another fact, we changed again, same girl, got I think it was something like 7 out of 20 for a maths test, and got quite upset about it. Worked out pretty quickly that 7 out of 20 isn't very good. And we said, well, Kevin, even, let's not look at that. Let's, from now on, whatever you get in the maths test, you put the number you got right. So this time I got 7 right, okay? And next week, I'm going to try and get more right, okay? And to stop beating yourself up because the marking system actually has with it a judgment.
Just so that thing about beating yourself up, it's I won't read out the people's names perhaps given it, but I've got 4 in front of me which touch on that idea of self-confidence and being judgmental of oneself in the wrong way, or, and I guess this is the flip side of the coin, always putting other people first, so you're not actually looking after yourself. So that what I'm hearing is this is where the facts, as in your own facts, whatever you choose them to be, are so important.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it could be, you know, one fact could be, this is the first time I've committed to a run and I've gone running and I didn't feel like it. And I overcame a block. You know, that needs to be noted. And if once you get into the habit of doing that, 3 facts every day, okay, you'd be quite amazed at how it tends to change the week as it looks. You know, what was good about today, rather than particularly adults where they say, how's it going? And you go, okay, or not very good, or, you know, I'd rather say, okay, what was good about today? And it's quite interesting how that sort of pulls the rug from under you about being able to dwell in stuff perhaps isn't particularly pleasant, but it makes you go, actually, no, hang on. Yeah, that was good today. Yeah, that was good. And it does reset you. It's a bit like a golfer. The golfer, there isn't a golfer that plays the game that hits every fairway, right? And when they hit the shot and it goes in the rough, all right, amateurs in particular can get quite annoyed. And, you know, pros get annoyed, but only for a very, very short segment of time. When they go in the rough, if the amateur is still mad, he's not going to get out of the rough. He's going to start hacking around and get worse and worse and worse. So it's so important that you're in the best possible state for the next shot. and even with the guys that I work with, I try and encourage them. There's no such thing as a good or a bad shot. It's simply how much should it match your intention. So if I hit a shot and it matched my intention perfectly, and it was a straight drive and it just drew off there, and it rolled and went into the rough, that's still a great shot because I'm separating that. Now, I said, that was a great shot. Okay, I'm in the rough. Well, so what? Because it was a great shot. I'm in a much better position than I see some people who straight away just look at the outcome and have no appreciation of the process at all. Oh no, it's in the rough again. And so it goes on. And then there is a sort of spiral, a downward spiral of performance as you get worse and worse and worse. So just, did you match your intention? If the answer is yes, then celebrate on it. And then when we get to the end of the week, so as we look at this now, so we've scrolled through and we're on to day 7, okay? Now we're looking at our cycle review. So the cycle is 7 days. The next thing is, what are the 3 things that really went well? So now you're looking back at the week, not at what do I need to do better, because that's the normal way of looking at it. We're looking at it, what went well, okay? Now, you'll be repeating 1 or 2 things. It might be that one of the things I did, I went running for 5 days in a row, and I went 20 minutes, and I've never done that before in my life. And I've taken advantage of the fact that I can't work at the office, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going on an exercise regime. Well done, me. Okay? Now, the next thing is, if you go down, and this is the, if you like, non-judgmental way of looking at improvement. Okay? Now, I have to say to you that there is nobody that can have perfect planning. I don't, in any walk of life, whether it's a training session, a preparation or whatever. And to me, every time you do something, if you could do it again straight away, you change something. So all I'm saying to you is, if you could rerun the week, what would you do differently? Is there anything you do differently? And it might be, do you know what I think I'm going to do? I'm going to try and get up earlier now because actually the kids, we've got 2 kids and they're both at primary school. They're much more with it first thing in the morning. I'm going to work with them after breakfast now. I've changed that. But you didn't know that you needed to change it until you've experienced it. And this is what's really important. People think that they make a mistake, therefore I have to improve. That is so unhelpful. What you should be saying is, I've had the experience, I've done it. Now, if I do it again, what would I do differently? And that is a far better way to do it. And then the last one is actually, what are we going to focus on during the next cycle? And it might be you're going to continue the same on 1 or 2 things, or you're going to change something or whatever. But the most important thing is you have to be kind to yourself. And as adults, we're not very good at it. We're very, very good at telling people what we do wrong and telling other people what they do wrong, but they're not very good. We're not very good. And I can understand it in this environment about telling people what they do well.
Brilliant, thank you. And just a reminder to everybody, it's there at the bottom right hand of your screen, daremagazine.com/no limits. That's free. There's well over an hour's worth of content with myself and Dave explaining how to use the whole journal and the program, and also you can have this download as well. So I hope that helps in your situation. I'm conscious, Dave, we're starting to run out of time and I've still got oodles of questions, so I'm going to put my head down, spin through them and ask you if you'd be good enough. Let's see if we can do a quick fire round to end end up the session. Right, you talk about, this is from someone called Mankey, which is I'm not sure that's their exact name, but Mankey. You talk about trying to recreate the pressure you would feel on the golf course in your book while practicing. So this is obviously the pressure principle, your book here. How can an amateur do that at their local range? Quick fire response to that.
Quick fire response to that. If you're at your local range, okay, usually there are markers around. And I suppose really the best way of doing it is go there, spend 5 minutes working out the distance to the first sign there, and you work out that, and it might be a chip of 20 meters. The next one might be a hit of 100 yards. The next one might be a 3-wood, and it has to go between those 2 flags. And the next one might be a 7-iron, then it has to go over there where the 150 marker is, or whatever. I mean, no matter what standard of golf, you can do that. And then what you do is you write that sequence down, okay? And then you decide, right, okay, what's my margin on each one? And then you have to hit each one. If you miss it, you start again. And what that does is actually, oh yeah, I got it right. And I'll just give you an example. I was working with a guy who plays on the Australasian tour, so full-time professional, okay? And I did this with 4 shots, okay? It was a chip, a wedge to a tree, ironically. So you can see we're not always blessed with it. A 4-iron had to hit between 2 poles where we imagined a green would be, and a 3-wood. Okay, so that's 4 shots, okay? And it took us 1 hour and 15 minutes to achieve it.
Well, having seen you put Fran under similar pressure with putting, I can vouch for the fact that you do make them do it. So there you go. That's how you recreate pressure. Stuart is kindly asking, where is the buy button for the journal, the program on the website? We've actually taken the buy button off for now because we can't fulfill it, but hence we've made some of it available for free, but it will be back online and available to buy at some point when hopefully we're all back in a pleasant new normal, whatever that will mean. I've had a similar question about also, actually one about kicking, but the one I'm going to, John is asking about the narrative in the book. He says focuses on anxiety and pressure increasing due to being under the watchful eye of peers, which I guess could also be fans or whatever.
Yeah.
He said, is there anything for fear of getting injured or feeling injured in the lead up to big games? Is there any advice you can give on that with regards to managing the worry and concern about that?
Yeah, the fear of getting injured usually happens when somebody has had a previous injury. It is quite difficult. I think that the thing that I can suggest to you is a little bit that if you don't commit, you're more likely to get injured again. So it then becomes an issue, particularly in contact, of technically being sound in contact. If I just give you just a couple of little principles, the tighter your body is, the stronger your body is. So if you've got a big guy coming at you, you need to be shoulder and around him. And I wouldn't try and knock him backwards. I would let him fall over me and trip him up. There are a lot of people who sometimes get obsessed with trying to smash people. And when they do it, they haven't got control, and they do it with arms outstanding here. And then you get a problem with the shoulder, or you might get a clavicle injury or dislocation and so on. And that usually happens through poor technique. So what I would say to you, if you're concerned with that, work on your technical contact skills as much as you can. Okay, and I'm going to say this in the nicest possible way. Try not to do everything to everybody on the pitch. Okay, just work in your area and slowly build from that.
Big one here. Dave, what's your go-to method when helping elite performers deal with performing under perceived huge pressure? I know that's a very difficult one to answer quickly, but apart from reading your book, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did that for you for free. There you go.
And I mean, it's essentially with all of this, it's process versus outcome. I mean, but that's not very helpful. So if, for example, they've got a really, really important shot to the green, okay, the smaller the target, the more engaged you are. So is this guy a rugby player or a golfer? What does it matter?
Sorry, spinning back through. Well, looking at rugby, I believe.
Okay,
I'm not entirely sure, to be honest.
Okay, well, let's take kicking a rugby ball. Okay,
yeah.
We're kicking a rugby ball for a penalty. Okay, so instead of aiming at the gap between the posts, we're going to aim at the middle of the gap. So we're going to make that a little bit smaller. Instead of just looking at, well, the point on the ball, we're going to look at the piece of stitching on the ball. So the more engaged I become on the process, the less my mind can wander and pick up all the other external factors of the crowd, the noise, and so on and so forth. So the more you can zone in on the process, so I know exactly where I'm hitting the ball, I know exactly what part of the foot, okay, and I know exactly the part that I am aiming at. But the one thing I would say is it is important that you actually practice those processes. You can't kind of go the night before, oh, let me just have a look here. Oh, that's it. Yeah, I've got it now, stitching and look at it. It doesn't work like that. You have to have practiced that. And you know, sometimes people go, yeah, but it's only in practice, so it doesn't really matter. And that's the bit that lets you down, is in practice. It really does matter. And then one of the things you can do is, okay, right, if you find it too easy to hit a target that wide, then go right narrow angles, 5 yards from the try line, and hit it at a very, very small angle and try and hit that. And that will start to zone in on it. But fundamentally, process versus outcome. If you focus on the process, the outcome will happen. If you focus on the outcome, what if I miss, et cetera, then we can't focus on the process. And that's the bit that lets us down.
Brilliant. Right, 2 more questions and then we're going to have to wrap up. What I would say to everybody is if you've submitted a question and we've not been able to answer it, we'll do our best to do some written responses for you, which we'll distribute either on the website, in the Dave section, and or on social media. But Dave, we can have a chat about that later, can't we, Dave? There's loads of questions. The last real big question from someone called Natasha, and I think this is very relevant perhaps for a lot of people. I'm struggling to stop judging or complaining about myself to others and thinking about what they think, what I am or doing in business and in home life. I'm programmed to be the best for others, but put that before being the best for me, if that makes sense. I'm just starting the journal, hoping it will help me in forwarding my business and fitness goals by doing things for me that only compare me to myself, which I know is something you like to talk about, but really struggling to do this. How do I start to change my mindset? So I think the question is, how do you start to focus on on yourself?
Yes, I think the key thing is to try and being sort of short about, give yourself a profile about, you know, well, this is what I am, and try to be non-judgmental. You know, my fitness level is 10. I know that doesn't help you, but just bear with me for the moment, okay? My confidence level of seeing other things and seeing things that are good in people is 10. And you put down the areas that you're trying to improve on, okay? Now, just so you go aside, one of the things I do with the players is we do the technical bit that you'd expect, hitting the ball, kicking the ball, right foot, left foot, blah, blah, blah. Then we go management, and then we put mindset. And mindset for a player is not much different than the mindset I think you need. So my mindset is, how good am I at seeing what I can do rather than what I can't do? And we assess that 10, okay? So I think you need, Natasha, if you can, to do your sort of, give yourself maybe 6 descriptors. So you do a fitness one, a attitude one about how good you see yourself And he even subdivided it into, my personality, my approach to other people. And the other thing is, in your approach to other people is, I don't want you to sort of go down the sort of bubblegum bit that everything is good. But, there's a guy who wrote The 1 Minute Manager, and he said, if you want to change people, catch them doing something right. And sadly, I don't know when it happens, when a toddler is 18 months, everybody's gaga goo goo and nothing can go wrong and the kid is wonderful. Somehow, when they're at the other side, we ignore what we're good at. We just take it, well, okay, you're supposed to do that. And all we do is criticize. And sometimes that gets out of balance. And I can see how easily it can get out of balance. We need to turn that around a little bit. And you need to be, if you like, your own coach. So I'm coaching me. What would I do? And how would I assess myself? So get a manageable number, 8, 9 areas, and then systematically using similar to the journal. Okay, what are the areas? What are you going to try and do today? So it may be in business. In your business, one of them might be Monday in the morning. I'm actually going to go around, and I'm just guessing now, Natasha. I'm going to go around to everybody in the office, and I'm going to find something good to say about them. And I'm just going to do that Monday morning, and I'm just going to go and do it and force myself to do it, even though I might feel a bit awkward. I'm going to make myself do it, and then I'm going to assess how I feel and also note how it made them feel. And then
thanks, Natasha. All the best with that one. Right, a final question before we wrap up, Dave. This is one from Matthew. I'm slightly paraphrasing. He's saying, what's the one or the particular working relationship that you're most proud of and why? And I'm guessing it means coaching relationship. I knew you'd hate that one, which is why I'm asking you.
Yeah, I know. I think pride is a funny kind of thing there, Matthew. I'm not sure.
I'll reframe it. What has fulfilled you most from a coaching perspective? Which coaching relationship has been the most fulfilling?
I don't think I think that relationships, like anything in life, ebb and flows. It's usually particular tasks within an individual. I think possibly one of the most rewarding coaching things was teaching a lady to play golf. And her name was Georgina Clegg. And before you all scurry up on Instagram about the LPGA Tour, she didn't play for the LPGA Tour at all, okay? She played in New Zealand, and she became captain of the ladies section of the golf club. And a lot of you already, I can be going, well, hang on, what's this about elite, okay? Now, captain of a golf club is a pretty an established player, okay, and very good interpersonal skills and quite a bit of responsibility. And she was captain of the club for, I think, probably 4 years. And during that time, the women's membership blossomed. And she played every week, played twice a week, I think, most of the times, okay? And what was the big thing about it? She was 78 when I taught her to play. She had never picked up a golf club. And that happened quite a time ago. And that kind of thought, well, you know what? Everybody, whatever you're doing in life, whatever stage you're in, you can get better, and that's not a criticism, and you can enjoy it. And that was one of my eureka moments, which I've had quite a few, but that was one of the ones that stuck on me. And when people say, yeah, but at my age, I just look at them and I don't even listen. I don't even hear it. I just want to see what you can do.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dave. Really appreciate that. I hope everybody watching, listeners enjoyed it. You will have a chance to pick up on it again. We're going to post it out on Facebook and probably on YouTube as well. Just to confirm, anybody who's not had their question answered, and we've got ones from basketball players and business people, and they're still coming through on Twitter and goodness knows what else. Dave and I will put our heads together and we'll figure out a way to answer as absolutely many as we can. But for now, I wish you all very well wherever you are. Stay safe, stay healthy, and if this carries on, no doubt we'll do it again. Hey, Dave?
Yes, I've enjoyed it. It is, just to let you know, it is 25 to 11 here in the evening.
Excellent. Well, you need to get your 8 hours of sleep in then. Yes. Hey, listen, thanks again, Dave, and I look forward to speaking soon. Take care, everybody. Cheers.
And bye-bye. Thank you, everybody, for your questions.
Take care now. Bye-bye.